you very much indeed. I want to continue now with our ongoing analysis on Eskom. Here's the background. Wage talks have deadlocked, 2 unions walk out, but perhaps more importantly is a threat by the unions of a national blackout should there be failure to reach a degree of wage settlement. The gap is wide, by the way. Eskom says it simply can't afford it. It's offering 0%, and the unions at this point wanting 15%. Kudupasiwe, who speaks for Eskom, was with us a little earlier. He is hoping that talks can resume at some point. Joining us now is energy sector analyst, commentator and writer Chris Yelland from EE Publishers. Chris, let's get to the money in just a moment, but this talk of a blackout, how possible is that? How seriously should we take that threat by the unions?
Well, look, it's a regular threat during wage negotiation seasons at Eskom. Of course, it's part of the leverage and bargaining power of the unions. There are 3 unions, basically, Numsa and Solidarity. And yesterday they walked out of negotiations because Eskom was offering them a 0% increase. The threat, of course, is real if a strike can be called and sustained for a reasonably extensive period. Obviously, in the short term, Eskom can make plans. They have got stockpiles of coal, although some of these stockpiles are not as good as they should be. But the point is they can continue for a time. But at some point, it really starts to bite. And this could threaten security of supply.
So how close are we to that position where it could start to bite?
Now, I think we are some way away. The walking out of talks is just a start. And one also must remember that a striking by these unions is actually illegal because the workers at Eskom are declared as essential workers performing an essential service, and by law they're not allowed to strike, but that doesn't seem to stop it from happening now and again, wildcat, unlawful strikes. But the point is we haven't reached that stage yet, and then of course there is a certain time that Eskom can sustain the strike. So maybe a month or 2 away.
But all of this seems to have done enough to spook Eskom. When we spoke to the utility a little earlier today, they said they had already been in conversation with the South African police and were dusting off contingency plans.
Well, of course they have to, because strike action, especially wildcat strike action, can get unruly. There can be damage to property and to lives. There can be burning of property, and so they have to take these things seriously. And I'm sure they are doing just that by engaging with the necessary security authorities.
So how then is how then is this impasse then bridged? Because again, Eskom telling us a little earlier this afternoon, to quote, the bank account is dry. They simply don't have the money to meet a 15% wage demand, let alone if that is readjusted. What does the utility do?
Well, certainly Eskom is between a rock and a hard place. Yesterday I attended a media briefing at Eskom National Control where they explained that they really need to cut costs, and they're looking to the 2 major cost items in their income statement, and that is primary energy, that means coal, and staffing costs, that means wages and salaries. So they're looking to firstly reduce staffing numbers. They are heavily overstaffed by world standards and by benchmark studies that have been conducted, and they're also extremely highly paid staff by South African standards. So they're trying to keep a lid on salary increases and wage increases, and at the same time they're trying to reduce staffing numbers. But of course they have to look to increasing sales. That means they want to put up the price of electricity, and they also want to increase sales volumes. The amount of sales volumes, that is the amount of kilowatt hours that they're selling a year, has actually been declining quite steadily over the last 10 years. And to compensate, they want to put up the price. And today I can advise that Eskom have served court papers on the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, taking their price increase that they were granted by NERSA on review in the courts. They were granted a 5.2% increase on the 1st of April, and Eskom says this is not enough. They want a much bigger increase. and they're challenging nurses' price determination, and they're taking the matter to court to try and get the courts to take this whole matter on review so that they can get a higher price increase than Eskom has allowed, than NERSA has allowed them on the 1st of April.
So if it's all, Chris Yelland, about swelling the coffers, this 0% which is on the table as far as Eskom is concerned, could this simply be a ploy then to fire people who embark on an illegal strike and thereby bring down their staff numbers?
I really can't answer that for certain, but it's an interesting thought and a frightening one at that, because it could be the start of some very serious unrest, labour unrest in South Africa, as people really come under threat, and their jobs come under threat. These are not happy times for the utility, and they're not happy times for the South African economy. Eskom, as I say, is between a rock and a hard place. It needs to increase its sales volumes and its sales revenue, and at the same time decrease its costs, which is primary energy and staff costs. And that leaves some very hard political choices and policy choices to make going forward.
And just finally, Chris Yelland, you have to have some sympathy for union members, given that, again, a question I put to Eskom a little earlier this afternoon, why should a technician who's been working as hard as possible be made to pay for malfeasance and mismanagement?
Yeah, of course, there is a human cost to all of this, and it's something that people are going to feel hard in their pockets. But the counter-argument from Eskom and from many analysts is that Eskom staff are extremely highly paid compared to others in South Africa in similar positions. So it's really a question of finding the right balance between affordability and cutting one's coat according to the cloth. And Eskom say that they are financially unsustainable as they stand right now. They're going to need, if they don't get things right, they're going to need bailouts, and ultimately that's going to cost the taxpayer and the economy of South Africa. So yes, as I say, some very difficult choices ahead for Eskom, with a very real threat of labour unrest ahead.
All right, Chris Yelland, thank you very much indeed.